Well, hello everyone. My name is Don Meadows, and my assigned theory was educational anarchism. Anarchism is the rising up either by a section of society or an individual against the establishment, either the government or an established rule, for the purpose of standing up for their own rights when the person or group feels like the establishment has done some overreach. There is a kickback from those who it involves or it affects. But we're going to talk about how anarchism is connected to education. First of all, there's a brief history of this movement as it connects to education. Anarchism itself, as a comprehensive political theory, dates back all the way to the French Revolution. However, in regards to its connection to education, we find that in the 1970s, anarchism played a major role in not simply trying to reform education, but revolutionizing it at its core. The movement was known as the deschooling proposal. However, this movement lost a lot of steam in the 1990s, but it does, however, remain an option to educational reforms in the minds of many. In fact, it's still going on today in some circles. There are still a lot of people subscribing to this theory of education. The main personality in this is Ivan Illich. He is the guy that wrote the deschooling proposal, and he came to the forefront in the 1970s to propose this retooling or reconstruction of the corporate and current school system. There was really some main principles that was guiding Illich's thought process and his ideology about education. And the first one is this: that top-down management of schools makes the student powerless, and that the same top-down management is typical of the modern technological economy that prevents people from learning. It renders the student powerless. It takes away the authority for them to be able to be educated the way they want to. Number two, having the right to choose how someone is educated should be left up to the individual, not to the government, not to those who are in establishments to make the decisions as to how we feel like we can learn the best way or the content in which we learn. And number three, a system of vouchers or tuition grants by which educational funds are then channeled directly to the beneficiary, who will decide for themselves how to spend their funds for their own education. Three major purposes for education. Ivan Illich really had these three main purposes working throughout his whole. And the first one is this: that educational resources should be made available for the life of the student, not just while they're in school, whether it be just a high school education, a college education, or graduate, postgraduate work. The entire life of that person, they need to have the resources available for their disposal or at their disposal. And then number two, the learner is to share what they've learned with others so that they can learn. It's kind of like we hope that we are making disciples. We are making disciples ourselves that then in turn make disciples themselves. It's a process that works itself out from one person to the next. And then also to provide a public platform for the purpose of raising concerns by the student. One of his passions were to make sure that the student has a public platform free from oppression to raise the concerns they have with the establishment. He thought that was very important. There are some classic and modern expressions of educational anarchism. Some not so classic, and some go all the way back to how we even began to teach in the family setting. It is difficult to pinpoint the classic expression of educational anarchism, But homeschooling, although not directly connected to this movement, is and has been practiced throughout history, both as the only way of education and as an alternative to institutional education in current day. Also, school vouchers are also an expression of educational anarchism. We see this in the life of the disadvantaged and those who live in failing school districts. This gives the parent or guardians the opportunity to take what they've paid in taxes and use it either in private education or whatever education they see fit for their child. I remember this very clearly back about 15 years ago, I guess, when I lived in Florida. Governor Bush began to use these school vouchers for failing school systems and underprivileged families to be able to properly educate their children outside of their districts. Implications for contemporary Christian education. There are a few. The parents have the right and the opportunity to instill a solid Christian education in their children as they either homeschool or they are able then to take other opportunities to educate their children and also to pick the curriculum. I will say this about homeschooling. I think the major thrust behind homeschooling movement is not only to control the environment in which our kids learn, but also the curriculum. And then number two, there's time to properly teach with one-on-one instructions. Whether that parent chooses a private education in a school, private school, those classes are generally smaller and the teacher has an opportunity to spend more one-on-one time with the student, or if they do schooling at home where they can do that with their own child. And if the tax money is given back to in vouchers, the parents are then given the opportunity to find and employ the best possible solution to their family's educational needs. So they have the authority, they have the opportunity to choose for themselves.